And we're back within the cool confines of the studio here after taking a day off yesterday to address a couple of hundred hardy patriots in my former home state of Michigan, where it was a tad warm. I am Steve Deace. Todd Erzin is here with me, as is Aaron McIntyre. We're going to be joined here in a moment by our good friend Rachel Semmel from the Center for Renewing America. She returns after receiving rave reviews for her previous performance here on the Deace Group. Let us know what you think about what we think. Steve@stevedeace.com is how you can email the show. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter @Steve Deace Show. Look for my name as well on MeWe, Parler, and Gab. And if you're looking for clips of the program, go to rumble.com/Steve Deace Show. By the way, I got an interesting note yesterday on Twitter as I'm waiting to catch my flight home in the airport. It made me laugh out loud. I even responded to it. Guy sent me a note and he says, "Hey man, I listen to the show every single day. You guys must have really tore it up today because you're not on any of the social media. So I guess you guys had to really censor the program." And so again, he listens every day, right? I thought we had adamantly pointed out we were off yesterday, right?
Someone messaged
me up.
Someone messaged me on Twitter last night. How many people have asked you if there was a show today? And I just said,
yes,
all of them.
Yes. I mean, it's a good problem to have.
Exactly.
I mean, you would rather have this problem than then what the hell are you guys still here for, right? But I just thought it was funny. Hey, I listen every day, man. You guys must have really tore up the social media censorship with how much I can't even find the show today because we didn't do a show today. We had the day off, so I got a kick out of that. All right. You know, it's funny too. As you get older, you get so accustomed to things in such a homebody that I was gone for like 24 hours and just felt like I was gone forever. You miss the little things. Like I missed the glasses I'm wearing right now because I was wearing the normal pair I wear and they just aren't as good. They aren't as clear as the pair that I'm wearing right now from our friends over at Better Spectacles, because these are German-engineered Rodenstock eyewear available for the first time here in the U.S. It's a 144-year-old company. Ronaldus Magnus himself also wore these kinds of glasses, and now they have them for difficult prescriptions like mine, where they have to treat you. They're called progressive lenses, where they have to treat you like you have bifocals, but you don't really need them. The problem is you look at a computer screen for so long that you're both a little farsighted and a little nearsighted, and so a normal prescription doesn't help, right? That's what we mean by a difficult prescription. If you've got a plain old prescription or a difficult one like me, you knew with me it was going to be difficult, right? It just could not be simple. It had to be contrarian. That's how I roll. Whichever is whichever line you're in, they can help you at Better Spectacles. It's not an online company with low quality ratings. You're going to receive the same expert consultation from one of their phenomenal opticians at a teleoptical appointment on this website that you would if you went to one of their stores around the country. BetterSpectacles.com/Steve is where you want to go. That's where you're going to get their Go Spec lenses that I'm wearing with the free handcrafted Rodenstock frames. That's what I'm wearing right now at BetterSpectacles.com/Steve. Oh, by the way, for our audience, they'll give you an introductory offer of 61% off at BetterSpectacles.com/Steve. All right, coming up next hour, of course, we will get into some Feedback Friday, but we begin on a Friday, as we always do, with the Deace Group. Your weekly look at the week that was is, of course, going to begin, as it always does, with issue 1. Bleep, Lord Nefarious says.
Attacks on me, quite frankly, are attacks on science, because all of the things that I have spoken about consistently from the very beginning have been fundamentally based on science.
Are you vaccinated? Why are you wearing a mask outside? What's your thought process? No comment.
Are you actually worried about this new sort of re-upping of attacks on you?
I'm concerned about that more because it's really very much an attack on science, I think, Rachel. People want to fire me or put me in jail for what I've done, namely follow the science. It's preposterous, Chuck.
Can you imagine any circumstance where President Biden would ever fire him?
No.
Busy summer ahead, infrastructure, election reform. What does the press get wrong when covering Biden's agenda.
I want to turn now and talk to you a little bit about this IG report, this Inspector General's report about a very key day, which was when Lafayette Square was cleared, and then we saw President Trump with his photo op in front of the church there.
The IG report is saying that the park police cleared the park with the purpose of setting up this fence, because obviously the protesters needed to be moved back from this area where they were defacing statues and potentially pulling down the Andrew Jackson statue. If the White House president and his team had to do it all over again, would you have gassed and pummeled protesters to clear the park so the president could have a photo op?
Just yesterday, as Alex notes, we saw protesters, peaceful protesters, pushed back so that President Trump could have that photo op in front of St. John's Episcopal Church.
Up next, the president and his photo op.
It turned out they were trying to clear the area so President Trump could get a photo opportunity outside of a church.
And I have to say, you know, when I read through this report, it sounded as if this Inspector General was auditioning to become the Inspector General at Mar-a-Lago, because, I mean, this is almost a whitewash of what occurred on June 1st.
Please, at ease. I keep forgetting I'm president.
Today, we reaffirm that transgender rights are human rights.
You know what the Joint Chiefs told us the greatest threat facing America was? Global warming.
What have we learned from our experience with international terrorism? In order to address that problem, arresting low-level operatives is merely a speed bump. You've got to attack and dismantle the command and control element of a terrorist group. That may mean people sitting in Congress right now.
I was on Long Island this weekend visiting a really dear friend, and I was really disturbed. I saw, dozens and dozens of pickup trucks with, explicatives against Joe Biden on the back of them, Trump flags, and some cases just dozens of American flags, which is also just disturbing.
We've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making.
I said I'm going to go to the border. And
when are you going to the border, Vice President?
The administration has asked. I'm not finished.
Let's bring in CNN chief legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin to talk about this and more. Hi, Jeffrey.
Hello, Allison.
It's been a while.
It has been a while, indeed.
I want to say, before I throw it to Rachel, because the guest normally gets to go first, but I kind of feel as if Lord Farquaad was at least somewhat addressing me in that clip. People want to throw me in jail for following the science. I just want to say.
He was addressing
you. This is the first time, I think I have said this on this show, maybe ever, but certainly in a long time. Everything that Anthony Fauci said in that particular clip is true. I do want to throw you in jail for following the science, because the science, not science, the science is from the pit of hell, which is where you've been getting your marching orders, sir, for at least the better part of the last year. So I just felt, in the interest of following the truth, no matter where it leads here on this program, we have accused him of a lot of dissembling and dishonesty, and we were always right. But in this case, I thought he was perfectly, pristinely accurate. And I just wanted to note that. I absolutely do believe you belong in jail for following the science. And with that, we now restore regular order. As the guest, Rachel Semmel, you get to go first. What was the best of our worst this week?
Well, I think without a doubt, it has to be Kamala Harris's interview. I haven't been to Europe, but not for the reason of just sheer entertainment, but also horror of our vice president not going down to where we have a massive human trafficking issue and a huge catastrophe down there. But to be a little cynical, the reason why I liked this moment so much is because there was this meme that whenever Joe Biden appointed her to be vice president, whenever they won, that she was going to be the scary, manipulative, really heavy-handed power that was president. I think we've realized now we know why she isn't. Now we know why she finished so poorly in the Democrat primaries. And when you have her advisors coming out anonymously like they did in the Axios piece this week saying, yeah, this isn't her specialty. Mm-hmm. Foreign affairs isn't her specialty. I think this is actually putting more cracks in the helmet that is Kamala Harris's political career. And that's never going to be a lose-lose for me. I will say a quick little bonus, best of the worst this week, you didn't include it in your montage, was when Biden just yesterday was whispering into Boris Johnson's ear saying he never wanted to go back home. I think you buried the lead on not including that clip. That was also probably one of the best of the worst this week.
Just to clarify, Rachel, you mentioned foreign affairs are not Kamala Harris's specialty, correct?
That's what her aide said.
Okay, but you put the qualifier of foreign there?
Correct.
It was
correct.
foreign,
Our board,
not affairs in general, foreign affairs. I just wanted to clarify. Okay.
Yes.
Because again, we are suckers for exactness here on this program. Todd?
Aaron, it's how you bookended this entire thing that had me at hello.
And apparently goodbye if it was the bookends, right?
Because
I'm in a mood.
You are?
I didn't get a lot of sleep.
Because the coverage of Fauci for a year and a half now, and it only gets more and more ridiculous as we are now in full I am the science mode, as all of the clapping seals in the press, yes, yes, yes. So we have that expert. On the other end, we have Jeffrey the masturbator Toobin brought back as another expert that the press loves. Experts
Come again,
say,
what'd you just say?
What'd you just say?
What'd you just say? Master debater is what you said, correct?
No, I did
not.
not.
Oh, okay.
No, not at all.
Okay.
So listen, the Venn diagram of coverage of Fauci by the press, and the press and all of its moral outrage on everything.
Clay Travis said boobs.
Yes, teenager said word 20 years ago, something like that. But just welcoming Jeffrey back, the Venn diagram of those two things is a circle.
Yes, it is. Yes, you must be ruined because when you were 14, you quoted from a gangster rap album on Twitter once or on your Instagram, right? Okay, but a 50-some-year-old man can just do his own live performance of Billy Squires' "Stroke Me," and a few months away, and then you even put him in front of one of your high-profile female personalities to essentially use her. But if this doesn't scream patriarchy, I don't know what does. Use her as his essentially a human shield / ghetto pass, right? To basically welcome him back in and say that it's A-okay. I mean, apparently Alison Camerata has no soul on top of everything else.
This is my point. It's so patently absurd, but it's not any more absurd than coverage of COVID for a year plus. It just isn't.
It certainly puts a whole new spin on this is a banana.
Yes.
Aaron, your thoughts?
There was a particular clip of Kamala Harris from this week where she was addressing some Guatemalans, telling them
she loves the Guatemalans.
Something that I was going to put right after the Alison Camerata clip, but I didn't do that because I did not want to go there. Do you know the clip that I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think this week the back-to-back clips of, I think it was MSNBC's national security correspondent, the back-to-back clip of him and the New York Times editorial board member, Mara Gay, I think is her name.
Yes.
So the guy on MSNBC saying, hey, we got to use what we learned about fighting Al-Qaeda and other insurgents in foreign lands. We got to use that against our own people here, including members of Congress. We gotta chuck them in jail as well. Back to back with Mara Gay saying, it's really disturbing to see a bunch of American flags on Long Island this weekend. That is the reality that they live in. They live in a different country than we do. If I was some member of Al Qaeda in some shanty town in the Middle East, or pick your terrorist group, and I saw a bunch of American flags in my neighborhood, I would say that that's disturbing as well, because that's not my country. That's what they think of us. We live in a completely different country. And I think
that'll preach right there. And back to what you said just quickly, Rachel. Cut old Joe a bit of slack. I bet he doesn't want to go home, right? I mean, they make him go to Delaware every single weekend. Jill tells him what to say and think. He's probably actually able to pretend to be a world leader there. He can go off script. He's not being ushered around by 34-year-old or 19-year-old pages and interns and aides who really act as if they're president and not him. And he's probably gotten something other than oatmeal to eat. So I would imagine that I can understand why your 80-year-old grandfather with dementia who got out of the nursing home and got to do fast times at Ridgemont High for the octogenarian sect. I can understand why he doesn't want to go back home. I think that's kind of a little slack, right, Rachel? A little?
I think so. I also think it's a fair trade. If we have Meghan Markle, I'm fine taking her if they take Joe Biden. I will also say I would want to stay in a country where I didn't have to go back and Jill Biden, Ron Klain, Susan Rice, they were all president. So I absolutely cut him some slack. It's just, I don't know. It just feels like the feeling's mutual. Like I don't mind that he stays there.
Okay. All right. Let's get to the exit question on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being Greg Abbott's usefulness without a primary challenger and Ron DeSantis to copy off of, and 10 being Greg Abbott's usefulness with a primary challenger and Ron DeSantis to copy off of. Rank this week's level of total depravity, Todd.
Strong 10.
Strong 10. Rachel?
Oh, I'm doing 1.
You want more? You think it could be worse?
I want more, but I'm also in a really good mood because the Olympic trials are on, and I've literally tuned out on a lot of politics this week, and I'm like, this is the last Olympic cycle I'll probably be able to watch and stomach, so I'm just soaking it all in, and I'm happy right now.
All right, where are you at, Aaron?
I'm kind of with her. I've been watching a lot of World Cup qualification games.
My people.
What?
I'm just kidding.
What happened?
What has happened? What is happening? What is happening here?
It was a 10 after the first clip.
Thank you. Agreed. Before we get to issue 2, want to spend a couple of minutes telling you about issue 2 because I literally just deleted my script, so I can't do that. So we'll go right to issue 2. This is what happens. Take 1 day off.
You're a little punchy today.
Everything goes haywire, indeed. Let's get to issue 2. Trump DeSantis 2024. Maybe. Who knows?
As Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' star continues to rise with each seemingly weekly policy and platform win, and with former President Trump continuing to exert at least a sizable amount of influence within the GOP, it seems as if a ticket consisting of former President Trump and the Florida governor would make a lot of sense. But Trump will be 78 in 2024, and DeSantis has a major re-election race in Florida next year, so a lot can change in that short amount of time. Nevertheless, pollsters are still gauging the pulse of the electorate. Back in early May, the Trafalgar Group asked Republican voters if Trump should decide not to run in 2024, who they'd most likely support now. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis leads that group 35% to Ted Cruz's 15%. Trump supporters were asked the same question, and they support Ron DeSantis 48% to Ted Cruz's 20%. But if Trump does decide to run, those kinds of polls may be moot.
All right, before we get to the first question, I found my trusty little rundown. So let me tell you about our friends over at Patriot Wine. If you like to have a little drink of wine to wind down, see what I did there? It was weak. Don't look. If you have a drink of wine to wind down every now and then, here's how to make that drink 10 times healthier, because down in Argentina, they make a really dark red wine from world-class Malbec grapes that are grown at 9,000 feet. They have lab-tested these wines, and they contain up to 10 times more of the longevity and heart health nutrient called resveratrol that you will find in a lot of the other wines out there on the market. Resveratrol shows up on a lot of studies involving longevity, heart health, and brain health. These wines have loads of it, and they don't have loads of sugar, 90% less sugar than a lot of your store-bought wines, fewer chemicals, fewer additives. So it's not just that these are higher quality imported wines, but they taste great as well. Each of us have partook of a bottle of these in the past. All 3 of us came away with stellar recommendations, and it's great for grilling season. If you like red wine, goes great with red meat as well. We're offering you today 50% off one of their best Malbecs, as well as 50% off the shipping. So 50% off the wine and 50% off the shipping for high-class imported foreign wine today at PatriotWine2021.com. Again, that is PatriotWine2021.com. All right, let's get to the first question here. Aaron, I'll start with you. What is your reaction to this, just instant snap reaction to this as a potential 2024 GOP ticket? What is it?
So putting aside what you think of his personality, what you think of what he should have, did not accomplish, I think he was a better president than I would have expected back in 2016. Putting aside all of that, just looking at it straight from just a political and how these people are viewed by their own base, it seems to me like the old adage in training camp: if you got 2 quarterbacks, you got no quarterbacks. Now, for differing reasons. I think if you're looking to expand if you're looking to expand the footprint of your potential nominee, I happen to think that Trump has basically tapped that all out. And as we were shown with the last election, how many votes do we need now to garner in order to have a Republican win? Isn't it like 79 million or something?
We don't
like
know.
That? Yeah.
We actually don't know what the number is.
Yeah. So I think, though, regardless, Trump has basically sucked what can be sucked dry of his potential voters. So I'm not sure really how much you're going to expand upon that. And I do happen to think that maybe we'll have another pandemic if he does decide to run. Did I say that out loud? I said the quiet part out loud. My bad. So I really, my initial reaction is I don't think this is necessarily a great idea. I'm not sure it's necessarily going to hurt him. I mean, you can't be hurt, but I'm not sure how much further you can expand. And on top of that, Ron DeSantis, as we've discussed ad nauseum, is Trump without the personal squabbles and pointless bluster, with more accomplishments, acting affirmatively on his platform and agenda. So I think when you take away Donald Trump, you take away, really, quite frankly, an excuse by the media and by those within Republican circles as well. Let's be honest about that. I think you take away an excuse for ad hominems. You've taken away an excuse, just basically an excuse to do what the media has done for the last 4, 5, 6 years going on now. And quite frankly, what some in the Republican Party have tried to do with Trump as well.
All right, I want to get everybody's answer to this question before we have any follow-ups. All right, so same question to you, Todd. Your instant reaction to this as a potential GOP ticket?
Well, as potential, if you have this versus the field, I mean, you put strong money on this, so much so that you need to start as a party thinking about that primary process and not wasting each other's time with anything else other than getting behind this. It would be a lesson in futility to just go through a process where you deny. Well, it really doesn't even matter what you think about it on its merits in many ways. This would be a force of nature unless something happens in the future to change that.
Okay, Rachel, your thoughts?
What we need to take a step back and look at, and I know, Steve, you understand this just from seeing all the primaries that we fought, whether it be Senate, House, or even presidential for the last few years, we have to all pat ourselves as conservatives on the back and say the field right now is Trump, DeSantis, Cruz was on that poll. Like, these are not the Jebs, the Romneys, the Ryans. Like, if anything, the tail's no longer wagging the dog when it comes to the conservative part of the party. So obviously, I love Trump. You know, I used to work for him, so I like all the warts and all, as Aaron was talking about, but I have one tiny disagreement with what Aaron said. I think the media hates who we are as conservatives to the core, and while there may not be Trump as an excuse, you're already seeing them try to pile on a DeSantis with these disgruntled people that, you know, did this expose. Ron DeSantis made us cry at work. I think they'll just try to destroy everybody and anybody who is conservative and tries to run. So I get the point Aaron was trying to make. I think whoever we put forward is going to be an absolute, be absolutely destroyed by the media.
Okay, so I've got a follow-up for both Aaron and Rachel I want to get a take on. All right, so Aaron, let me go to you first. Sure. All right. The idea, how many more votes, how much more can you expand your base, right? That was... And it's a tough question to answer because we don't really know what the answer is because you're apparently just allowed to make up votes whole cloth. I'm sorry, did I say that part out loud? Yeah, I've been saying it since the morning after the election. But the one area where I would push back on you, and I say that as the guy that got the entire Blaze channel demonetized for saying that the morning after the election, is if you put DeSantis on the ticket. Now, of course, this is assuming he wins his reelect, right? Although he's in the process of destroying the Florida Democratic Party as we see it. So I think barring some personal scandal that's real,
this is my point,
okay, I don't see how he's going to lose. But you take Florida off the board. And from a campaign standpoint, this is the most expensive swing state in the country with really no close second. The other states in population base that are even close are not really contested states, California, New York, and Texas. You take Florida off the board, I mean, the amount of energy from a revenue standpoint, from a personnel standpoint, from an organizational standpoint, that you don't have to mount I mean, you can't just like give it up and not do it at all because he's on the ticket. But you absolutely aren't at DEFCON 1 for a year in that state. You might be at like a DEFCON 3, and you're reassigning those resources to a Virginia, a state that, you know, spent over 100 years actually until Obama being a solidly red state, where you may have a Republican win the governorship there later this year, for example. You spend that money on Wisconsin and Michigan, states Trump won in the past. I do think there's a hell of a lot of political value there. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm not sure really how many more people you're going to be able to. Essentially, my entire argument is, how many people really want to carry the water for Trump anymore? How many people are willing to do that enough to go to the polls? I think people there may be a there may
as
be
in how
element,
many people can he change minds?
Exactly.
Okay.
Because that's the point that I'm trying to make. I'm perfectly happy, and I think a lot of people are happy carrying the water for DeSantis, because, you know, at the end of the day, after, you know, dust-ups with the media and what, you know, for instance, what 60 Minutes tried to pull on him a few weeks ago, I think after dust, what has he done after that? He's gotten rid of critical race theory in the schools. He's fining cruise companies for requiring proof of vaccinations. He gets these policy. So it's not with Trump. It seemed like always the end game was he owned the media. He was not afraid to get in fights, and that expanded the Overton window for us a lot, and we owe him a lot of gratitude for that. All right. But at the end of the day, what are the accomplishments that go on with that? Was the risk to profit or the grief to profit ratio really what it is with Trump, what it is with DeSantis? No, I don't think. I think the grief to profit ratio with DeSantis is astronomically higher than it is with Trump.
So your issue is you don't want DeSantis on the bottom of the ticket. You'd prefer that he was on the top of a ticket. Really.
That's essentially what I'm saying.
All right, so Rachel, we're going to run out of time, but we have a unique opportunity here because you did work for the former president to let you address a sentiment all three of us have to a varying degree, which is that I agree with your premise wholeheartedly. They're going to try to destroy anybody, but there was at times a lack of discipline in Trump's response to that fed out here in the cheap seats. In a lot of the neighborhoods that, frankly, Trump should have won and didn't in the last election, that it got nauseatingly, it got cumbersome, tiresome for people. It was a soap opera. They wanted to move on from it. What's your response to that?
Well, there's no doubt that there were issues with, buttoning up different responses or reactions, or I know a lot of people didn't like the first debate, for example. I think I'm an anomaly because whenever I'm seeing the mean tweets, I like them and retweet them immediately. So you've got to take that with a grain of salt. You're right. I do think that DeSantis, to your point and to Aaron's point, does have enough of the let's push back on that CNN reporter at the press conference and not let her get a word in edgewise, while still being a little bit more disciplined when it comes to public appearances. It's his brand, though. So I think Trump's brand is Trump's brand. I don't necessarily think it hurts him as much as anybody thinks it does. But I also think that DeSantis is maybe what on paper people would call more buttoned up, with still the instincts of Trump when it comes to, say, the media.
All right, this has to be really quick. Exit question. What's a bigger threat to Trump successfully running again? A, his own lack of discipline. B, the percentage of voters who just don't want his type of soap opera no matter what. Or C, the fact Democrats can just steal another election since they already established the precedent last time. They can just say he's uniquely unpopular and do it to him again. Todd.
B, the percentage of voters who just don't want that type
Quickly,
of soap opera.
Aaron.
C.
C. Rachel?
C.
Okay. We'll come back. Let's talk some foreign policy. It appears we are absolutely on the brink of the post-Bibi Netanyahu era in Israel. We don't necessarily know for sure what it will look like, but it appears to be on the horizon, and we'll discuss that here next. If you are frustrated with your government school system, and if you're not, then either you're not paying attention or you're like our friend Todd Erzin over here, where you are a menace to society in the district in which you live, that when they hear you, when you walk into the school board meeting, they hear, where they preemptively start offering concessions in the hopes you'll stop tweeting about them and showing up. That's pretty much your approach there, and to the poor, unsuspecting school district of Carlisle, Iowa, correct?
Namaste.
Yes. All right. So if now maybe you don't have time for that, or you're just really not as stubborn and angry as Todd perpetually is. There are options for you, like our friends at Freedom Project Academy. I know personally the people that established this thing and have kept it going. I entrusted for a couple of years my own son to this, so I can't give it a better recommendation than that. Judeo-Christian values, classical curriculum. They teach you how to think, not what to think. You're taught mastery of subject matter, not propaganda. This is the way the people that made this country exceptional. This is how they were educated, and that's what they do at Freedom Project Academy. They have mastered online, in-person learning. And if you want to learn more about them for free for this fall, go to freedomforschool.com. Again, that is freedomforschool.com. We welcome back in the aforementioned ornery-old cuss over there. Also, Aaron is here, as is our good friend Rachel Semmel. Let's get to issue 3 here on the weekly look at the week that was, the post-Netanyahu era.
For the first time in Israel's history, the Arab Party has united with other Israeli political parties to form a coalition to unseat Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. This would mark the first time in 12 years Israel will not have Netanyahu at the helm. The coalition formed is expected to place former Israeli Defense Minister Naftali Bennett in Bibi's place. Who is Naftali Bennett? Editor-in-chief of AllIsrael.com Joel Rosenberg went on the water cooler with David Brody to explain.
Naftali Bennett, who looks to be the next prime minister, he's an exact protege, literally trained and recruited by Netanyahu. He served in the same special forces unit in the Israeli military that Netanyahu did. He became incredibly successful in business after the army, sold one of his companies for $145 million, was recruited by Netanyahu to come into politics as Netanyahu's chief of staff. Now think about that.
Wow.
This guy is almost an exact replica. Thinks the way Bibi thinks in terms of policy, in terms of worldview. He's the first religious kippah wearing Torah observant Jew ever in the history of the modern history of Israel to be prime minister. But Netanyahu hates him. He had a huge falling out with Bennett years ago and drove him right out of the party. And yet now Bibi is saying terrible things about Bennett, but the man served as defense minister. He served as education minister. He's young, 49, but he's pretty well experienced, and we'll have to see how he does in his first big moment on the stage as prime minister.
So my understanding is there's going to be, it looks pretty clear Netanyahu is done. What's going to happen is Sunday, there's going to be appearance after the Sabbath. I think that's where there's a confidence vote to usher in Bennett as prime minister and see if this can actually be the coalition that then takes Netanyahu's place. I was really flabbergasted. My buddy Joel there mentioned, I didn't know this until I heard Joel say this a few days ago, that Naftali would actually be the first religiously observant Jewish prime minister of Israel in its modern history. I mean, that got my attention. Wow. So let's get to the first question here. Rachel, I'll start with you. Let's start with the Bibi Netanyahu angle first. Do you think that he just hung on for power for too long? So he lived long enough to see himself become the villain rather than sort of politically die the hero here?
Yeah, I'm never going to be somebody who calls Bibi a villain despite the last couple weeks or months. I do think people are saying that he could have written his history books better if he would have sat out a couple election cycles ago. But I do think that Israel's stance and how strong they are would have also been affected, because I just am never going to be one that forgets the fact that Bibi has more or less pushed Israel to the front of the world on many fronts. I mean, you look at tech sectors, for example. Israel is the place where every tech company opens a business now. And so, yes, I think you can look at the last couple weeks, but the coalitions and the relationships that Bibi over these decades of service to Israel that he's built internally and even internationally, are, I think, strong and to the point that Israel never would have dreamed of having those if it hadn't been for Bibi. So sure, maybe his bio on Wikipedia would read a little bit better if he left a while ago, but I also think Israel might have been a little weaker if it hadn't been for him fighting to the end.
That's a good point. What do you think, Todd?
I've always been amazed looking on the diversity of opinion that exists within Israeli politics, because far be it from me to inject myself, but I always want to grab them like, you guys all realize you're under existential threat all the time, don't you? I mean, why do I have to tell you? It seems like that's something that really always stuck in Bibi's craw, and why he felt he was the indispensable man. Like, you guys are pretending that this isn't existing. We these people who want to kill us all the time. And therefore, yes, he became in many ways the type of person who would bend and twist to stay there, because he felt he was one of a small breed that took reality seriously. Again, this is not, I don't know all of his personality flaws. I can't comment on him like I can Donald Trump. But that's my perception. It reminds me of that conversation in the Dark Knight Rises between Commissioner Gordon and the young Robin. And Robin starts getting a little self-righteous on, looks like your hands are plenty dirty. And Commissioner Gordon's like, dude, do you know, for me to stand this post to do what I think was right, there was no way I was never not going to get my hands dirty in some way, shape, or form. I'm reminded of that in talking about what, you know, on in a more in-depth sense, what may have happened to Bibi over time.
I mean, there is really no left in Israel politically. This is a point that Joel has made on our show before. There really is no left politically in Israel as we know it in the West. They just really don't exist. There's a couple of, you know, fringe parties. Some of them will be a part of this coalition, it looks like. But overall, this is largely Bennett and Netanyahu. And it sounds even on some issues, Bennett may be to the right of Netanyahu. But this is largely a power. That's why it's become personal. This is largely a power struggle between these two men. And Bennett is trying to force Bibi out when he thinks his time is up, and not necessarily when Bibi does, right? But if you're going to do the things Bibi has done, which is take part in eradicating the political opposition like that, and the strong stances he has taken in defense of Israel's sovereignty, that's the point you're making, Todd.
Yeah.
Collateral damage is unavoidable.
Right. Unavoidable.
There will be a cost to these kinds of things. You can't ever come out of this with your hands completely pristine. That's just not how it's going to work.
And look at everything before Netanyahu and then in between Netanyahu's two terms. The amount of people over there who seem to willingly want to do the Arafat dance and think that, yes, President Clinton and every president under the sun could solve it. No one ever could. Bibi Netanyahu just never seemed to have any time for that nonsense, and to his great credit.
What do you think, Aaron?
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going to go. Channeling, I think we had Rosenberg on our show last February, where he said something that was a little bit surprising to me, in that the left doesn't really exist in Israel as we know it. And that seems surprising because I believe they have pride parades over there as well. But that is an important point to make, because I see a lot of leftists, as we know them here in the West, who say, yay, Bibi Netanyahu is going down, not knowing what Joel Rosenberg just laid out. The dude is basically, Naftali Bennett is basically a carbon copy of Netanyahu, and in fact, maybe a little bit to the right. Do you really, really know what's going to happen here? And as Ben Shapiro has pointed out on a couple of occasions, this coalition that's formed is pretty fragile. It's pretty fragile. Yeah. I mean, the Arab Party guys, a couple of fringe groups like the Arab Party, that could fall apart like that, and guess who's prime minister in 2 minutes? It's back to Bibi again. So I think Bibi Netanyahu will be prime minister again at some point in the near future. But it is fascinating to watch. One more quick point on this as well, along the lines of what you and Todd were saying. I think Netanyahu, for what he's done in Israel, some of the hard lines that he's drawn in the sand in Israel in terms of national sovereignty, he may end up going down like a Churchill. In the sense
I was thinking about that when Todd was talking,
In the sense of, you know what, saving Western civilization, saving UK's, but by doing the things that needed to be done after the likes of Neville Chamberlain tried to placate and equivocate to the Nazi regime. But at the end of his time, the people just said, nope, no more. We're tired of you. Get out of here. That's the thanks that you get sometimes for being a stickler and drawing those hard lines in the sand and doing the hard thing. But I will reiterate that because of the precarious nature of the coalition, I do think he'll end up being prime minister. But I think the Churchillian moment down the road still might be coming for him.
To me, I think and again, I don't know Israeli domestic politics beyond what people like my buddy Joel Rosenberg tell me. Just looking at politics as a process, as a methodology. If I were in Bibi Netanyahu's operation, the point I would be trying to exploit, what would be the utilization of Arab representation in your coalition and some of the fringe elements that they're trying to craft together for this alternative coalition. Because, I mean, these groups aren't signing on to someone who might even be to the right of Netanyahu on several issues, particularly culturally, as a religiously observant Jew, and Bibi is not. They're not signing on to this. The Arab Party is not like, we took a fresh look at this Torah thing and thought maybe, no, they're not. You see what I'm saying? They're not doing that. And somebody's using somebody here. Now, I'm sure Naftali's thinking, hey, I'm decorated military veteran. I ran the Department of Defense, education. I'm a multimillionaire. I'm the one using them. They're the mark, right? They're probably thinking, dude, no, you're the mark. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
But someone's the mark. Someone's the mark in this, right? And this, you're asking a lot from a guy that on an executive level, the Israeli people on the world stage doesn't really know, because he's been an administrator. You're asking for somebody on an executive level, their first foray in, to show a lot of political savvy, because at some point he's going to have to cut these people loose, right? At some point, gonna have to, right? You see what I'm going with this?
Yes.
This is a big time play for a rookie. To make. Now, maybe he's Fred Lynn, man, and he wins Rookie of the Year, MVP in the same year. Maybe he's Wally Joyner, Jose Canseco. It's that kind of rookie season. Fernando Valenzuela. I don't know, but there's a lot of realpolitik to be making there for a guy that's not had to walk in those shoes before. That's just the only point I'm making. Any thoughts on that? Anybody want to say anything about that? Rachel, you want to comment on that?
No, I think you bring up a good point, because I believe there was a Arab member of the coalition that walked away during all the shelling that we saw a couple weeks ago and joined the Palestinians over all the attacks of Hamas. And he was representing the government in this coalition of Israel, and he sided with the Palestinians. So I think there are some, again, I don't know this nearly as well as our buddy Joel, but it does seem like Bennett may be in over his head when teaming up with some of these folks who, to your point, Steve, do not have Israel's best interests at heart, and that could backfire.
Let's get to the exit question. If your confidence in the new potential Israeli leadership were a 1980s era one-hit wonder, which one-hit wonder from the 80s era would it be? A, Shattered Dreams by Johnny Hates Jazz. B, Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Or C, The Future's So Bright I Gotta Wear Shades by Timbuk 3. Aaron?
C.
C?
I guess C.
Okay. What do you think, Rachel?
A, because this whole coalition thing spooked me, and I always think we're living in the end times, and I expect the worst all the time.
From the girl who just gave us a 1 for Aaron's total depravity montage. Hey,
I'm an emotional grader, so sue me.
Very, very quickly, because we got to get predictions in too. Bibi Netanyahu aside, very quickly. Another foreign leader you guys have had admiration for in the past. Todd, quickly.
Easy, Thatcher.
Oh, that is an easy one. In fact, that's so easy, I'm now feel dumb for asking this question. Rachel, go ahead.
It was a dumb question, but when you said world leader...
She says with those perfect cheekbones. Thank you. Somehow it didn't sting as much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
But when you say world leader, it has to be Fauci. Good, bad, or ugly, right?
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah. I said respected, though, but I hear you. What do you think?
When I saw the rundown for, apparently I thought it was current world leader. So it's a tie between, I was going to say Joe Biden or Xi Jinping or Tayyip Erdogan. But really, I have a little bit of admiration. I'm sure he's done terrible things. But Viktor Orban in Hungary, he's done a lot of pro-family stuff over there, so that's cool.
I see you with your Babylon Bee kind of stuff, considering Joe Biden a foreign leader. I saw what you did there. All right. Let's get to a forced prediction this week, okay? Will Trump DeSantis be the 2024 GOP ticket? Yes or no? And then a quick reason why you answered that way. Rachel.
Yes. Right now, they're the only two people with instincts that align with the 78+ million Americans. I don't think there's anyone close right now.
Todd.
I'll narrowly say no because I think neither side's family will allow it.
Can you give me, that's a fascinating premise.
You've talked about the Trump side begging him not to do it. Like, can we get on with our lives, from his wife to his children, whatever it is.
If that were to happen, I'm speculating. I don't know that.
But we talk a lot about DeSantis' wife and what a part of the equation she is. I don't know this. I'm just guessing.
Okay.
But what if, like, honey, we're not hitching our wagon to that? So
It's interesting. I mean, we're talking two real alphas here. And while Trump often surrounded himself with strong women, Rachel, let's face it, dude, also, when it came to the guys, though, we got like Rex Tillerson and Reince Priebus. I mean, those guys just, their cologne smelled beta. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
This would be a different style of play than what you're typically used to.
Yeah, and I don't, listen, my wife, in certainly political matters and things like, she's got her own opinions, but ultimately, what I do, I kind of drive the ship for us. But when she says, hey, honey, I listen, because she, then it matters to her.
Yeah, okay. And she likes the DeSantis guy.
She likes the DeSantis guy, but when it comes to, listen, a lot of women have, obviously, Rachel's sitting right in front of us, have like managed to find the way with Trump that makes it work for them. We just know a lot of them don't. So, and if his wife is one of them, that's a problem.
Aaron, where are you at?
No, Trump will share his glory with no other, and I cannot see Ron DeSantis becoming a Mike Pence figure.
See, that's the thing, man. I can't I can't see Ron DeSantis figuring a way to work Trump into any answer the way Pence could. Any answer.
The real question, though, is what happens to Florida when he leaves and is no longer governor, and everyone that moved there has to find another state to move to, and there is no state.
That's why half of my emails are, don't let Trump run again, we want DeSantis, and the other half are, don't take my state away from me, I just moved here. My email is very divided on this topic, Rachel. You hit on that perfectly. Good to see you again,
We're all
sister.
going to be moving to cruise ships and living our own autonomy. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Take care. We'll come back with hour 2. Stay tuned. Back with hour 2, live and on demand here on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. You know, I forgot to do something last hour. Big time faux pas by me. Our friend Rachel Semmel and the Center for Renewing America, where she works, they got their Twitter account suspended last night for going after critical racist theory. I forgot to give her some props, man, because that is a clear sign that they hit a bullseye. You know what I'm saying? That they hit the enemy. They hit the spirit of the age right in the sack or in the heart. Okay, and I should have given her mad props for essentially. They're now made men now, or women. They have earned their bones, so to speak. Right? They got their first collar.
You're an Avenger now.
Yeah, is that how it works in the mob? You got your first collar, kid. Joe Pesci shows up, right? Gives you like a pack of Pall Malls and a shot of bourbon. You did it, kid. Okay, that's kind of what happened to Rachel and the Center for Renewing America last night. So, belatedly, I almost said posthumously, but they're not dead. Belatedly, mad props to them over there for you're on the radar now. Welcome to our world. All right, you earned your bones. Well done. Let's get to hour 2 of the program. Let us know what you think about what we think. In fact, you're going to do that here. Some of you will in a matter of moments with Feedback Friday. Steve@stevedeace.com is how you can email us. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, Parler, and Gab. Or you can follow me on Twitter at Steve Deace Show. Look for clips of the show at rumble.com/Steve Deace Show. And if you are a podcast listener, we're looking for you to do something for us if you don't mind. Hit the subscribe button, leave us a 5-star review. Those 2 things help the show to grow. And we want to thank the scores of you that have done those 2 things for us already. Let's get to Feedback Friday, which is brought to you by our friends over at realestateagentsitrust.com. You want to know when you've got a real estate agent you can trust. So, you live in the same home for 15 years now. It's 15 years this week that we moved into our home, that we thought this was a large enough home, nice enough neighborhood that we were getting ready to have our 3rd child, or we just had our 3rd child, and we thought this is the time now where we can they can grow up in this home, right? You've gotten a real estate agent you can trust when, as the years have gone on, so now 15 years in, we may need the AC might need to be replaced. The roof's kind of looking a little worn, right?
Yep.
And that's not my area of expertise. I don't want to get ripped off. So You know who I called? Hey, what's a good price range for this? Knowing what we need and what's in our neighborhood, right? You know who I call for all that stuff? It's been 15 years since I've put any money in this guy's pocket, and he still picks up the phone or answers the text to call. I called my real estate agent from that process 15 years ago, where he was helping us to sell our old home and then buy this one. That's how you know that you have a real estate agent you can trust, that's somebody, because now he's also very clever. Like, he called me out of the blue about a month ago. He goes, hey man, so I got a #1 best-selling book. In other words, thinking of upgrading, right? All right, but and I don't mind that, because I know I can trust him, right? I mean, he's not doing this for free, right? But that's how you know you can find a real estate agent you can trust. Where are you going to find one like that? Well, the name kind of says it all. realestateagentsitrust.com is where you can go today. realestateagentsitrust.com. All right, let's get to some Feedback Friday. Let us begin. This is from Harry. Harry says, I am writing this to bring to light the issue with Fauci, government, and the spirit of the age in healthcare. As it relates to COVID-19, I will make this brief, but also want to be clear. I believe the above mentioned not only have blood on their hands, but are stone cold killers. I have multiple credentials, but my highest level of education is a master's in micro and cell biology, and acute and critical care, and a DNP in cardiology. I'm not an MD, but I see patients every day, whether in an ICU treating or in the cath lab assisting the physicians with procedures. I saw firsthand what COVID could do to individuals. I also noted that unlike what was being reported in mainstream news, patients that were at the greatest risk of serious disease and death were older with multiple chronic medical conditions. Remember, our own data shows that the average death with COVID included 4 previous comorbidities. Harry is alluding to that. I contracted COVID myself and recovered in 3 days with 0 meds. I've spoken to many doctors and mid-level providers all over the United States. The stories are astounding and horrific. I know several physicians that received disciplinary action by the hospital they practiced at or the state in which they practiced. The crime? Treating patients with drugs not called remdesivir. Although later into the pandemic we had plasma from recovered patients, providers were essentially neutered by hospital administrators and state governing authorities regarding erythromycin, zinc, and hydroxychloroquine. Although these treatments had been proven safe and effective, the push was only for remdesivir. Remdesivir is an antiviral medication that the earliest studies go back to 2009 show 0 effectiveness on any illness it ever attempted to cure. Also fact that multiple studies and a huge trial in 2020 showed near 0 efficacy in fighting COVID-19. The FDA approval came in October, even though they knew the results of the studies and trials. I believe this was Big Pharma's chance to recoup money lost to this failed drug and a stopgap till the vaccines could be made available. Remdesivir is the pharma version of masks, only with side effects. How many lives could have been saved with the use of hydroxychloroquine? Fauci knew in 2005 that chloroquine was safe and effective against coronaviruses. I will close with this. It is exceedingly difficult to watch people die. As a practitioner, knowing more could have been done. Would these drugs have been the magic bullet? Of course not. But I believe tens of thousands could have been saved if we were allowed to use every tool we have. Harry sent me this email before the study that was published earlier this week. And I decided, given that study, to put his email to the front of the line to make sure that it was addressed first and foremost here on Feedback Friday. What has been done here is evil and evil. We went through this chain of events on the program the other day. I'm looking for something in my Twitter feed I want to share for you, but I've been asking this question for several months on the program now. If they were doing all of this on purpose to discredit treatments in order to clear the deck and create a market for their new cutting edge, far more expensive technologies, if they were doing this on purpose, tell me what would have been done differently than what has been done? What would have been done? Can you name one thing that would have been done differently that has actually been done?
No.
No. This is, let me find it here. Here it is. This came out last night. Merck is responsible for the creation of ivermectin. Ivermectin, it was discovered in 2015 as a strong antiviral drug, or anti-malarial, I think it was, drug, similar to hydroxychloroquine. And it won the Nobel Prize for the work that it did. 2015, that's not too long ago, right? Okay. Merck is now categorizing their own drug as dangerous. Why would they do that?
Hail Hydra.
Yes, they would. They're attacking the safety of their own drug. Why? Could it possibly be? It may not be. It's true. This may not be what I'm about to say. It may not be the motivation, right? It could not be. Okay.
We'll play that philosophical game.
But it could not be. We cannot sit here with certainty and say this is definitely the case, right? We can't do that.
Can't we?
We can't. Okay. It looks awfully suspicious, though, that Merck is out there trying to discredit their own drug, ivermectin, at the same time that they are racing to get emergency authorization on a new COVID treatment drug.
I'm sure it's just as inexpensive, though, as ivermectin.
I'm sure that it won't be. You're right. But the timing of that, at the very least, if you're a publicly traded company and you don't want to be seen as sinister, you don't want to be seen as anti-Christical, you don't want to be seen as Soylent Green is people, or as you just said, Todd, Hail Hydra, you'd be a little bit more self-aware about things like that, right? I mean, the most innocent explanation for this, because by the way, there's all kinds of ivermectin data out there, guys, and it's all better than even hydroxychloroquine's data is. The most innocent explanation for this is that, wow, these people just suck at self-awareness. But, right? Is there another innocent explanation for why you are trying to discredit your own drug, which just won the Nobel Prize in 2015, at the same time you're seeking emergency authorization for a new cutting-edge and likely far more expensive COVID treatment that would be, of course, sold and used in place of a lot of countries that are using ivermectin as we speak today? What is the other more innocent explanation other than, wow, these guys just have no self-awareness at all, the image they're projecting? Can you come up with another innocent explanation?
No, there are no innocent explanations.
So therefore, I agree that that's not even an innocent explanation. But your options appear to be zero whatsoever self-awareness during a pandemic by a publicly traded company. And the other option is, how are those voting machines in Antrim County? I mean, that's the other option, right?
Yeah.
That's the other option here. It's like, dude, guys, seriously, get a PR team. Or smell the sulfur. Those are your two options, it appears.
Yes.
Guys, can you think of a third one? Because I can't.
No.
Yeah. Been a lot of that, hasn't there?
Yes.
Been a lot of times we've thought, wow, either no self-awareness at all, or...
And it's the or, because the self-awareness problem isn't there in that class. It's with us, the we the people. That's where the lack of self-awareness is.
It's funny, one of the conversations I had yesterday in Michigan talking to a lot of, or numerous grassroots activists, is I heard a lot of conversation about how divided the grassroots is in Michigan. And a lot of what I heard is that essentially the Republican Party in Michigan is so wretched and so terrible that, I mean, it offered up Rick, I can't give you fresh water, Snyder. And then after I spend my time blasting Trump to kiss your rear end, you then still criminally prosecute me for not giving you fresh water. Remember that? Okay. It offered up Rick Snyder and then surrendered the state to Gretchen Whitmer, right? And what I was told by several grassroots activists is that there's so much division because the Republican Party is so bad that there really isn't like a principled like conservative grassroots. There's basically what some people told me were the crazies. Okay. And then there's the Republican Party, and they kind of feel like they don't fit into either camp. And to several of these people I talked to, I told them, I got to tell you, a few years ago, and I hear what you're saying. I know what you mean by that. You know, these are the kinds of people that are, you know, that send us like every headline from websites that we don't consider credible on our, that we can't, like I'm sorry, I can't base what I talk about on the show on Gateway Pundit and Conservative Treehouse, just to name a couple of them, because there have been too many things in the past they've done that have created a rep that if I attach myself to them, I put my own ability to bring you this content on my own at risk. I have to get other sources other than them. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so essentially what I was told yesterday is that the grassroots is really disjointed because there's nothing between the Gateway Pundit crowd and the Republican establishment. And so we're all spread out in this chasm between these two crowds. And I said, you know, pre-COVID, I'd have been much more sympathetic to this because this was something we often talked about, right?
Sure.
Well, I mean, there did seem to be for a few years on our own ranks an ability. We were just totally fine with just making crap up to match their making crap up, right? And we would often find ourselves correcting things that were just factually not true, right?
Yes.
Being represented by people wearing our own jersey, right? And then we went through Russian collusion, Kavanaugh, Ukrainian collusion, and COVID stan. And I must have said this to several people in Michigan at the State House yesterday. I am at this point Alex Jones with Bible verses. At this point, you know, hopefully I'm doing more homework than maybe he never did. But I don't know how else to react to what the events of the last few years have wrought. I don't know what else to do with that. I mean, we had a clip at the beginning of the show of a guy who whipped out his schlong, jerked it off on camera in front of his staff and peers, including females. And after just a few months of being away, they put him on camera with one of their more high-profile female personalities to grant him essentially absolution on air, right? As if, there's no other left-wing legal analyst that CNN could hire other than Jeffrey Tubin? There was no one else?
This is important.
No one else! Dude, our law schools are crawling with people that are even actually better looking on camera and better at this than he is. The point, they're rubbing your nose in it.
Yes, they are. This is a message.
They didn't have to do this. They could have found somebody younger, smarter, better looking at this, who understands turn your camera. Don't masturbate during staff meetings, okay? They did this to flip the bird at you, to rub your nose in it. The same people who then call you racist, misogynist, right?
Yes.
And so I'm at this point now where it's all a lie. Lockdown's a lie. Hydroxychloroquine, we were lied to. Ivermectin, you're being lied to now. The vaccines, they're now admitting they at least lied a little bit. The most pro-vaccine person whose intellect I respect is our friend Phil Kerpen, ace researcher, right?
Yes.
Earlier this week, when I asked him point blank, what does your data research show us was the efficacy? What was the number he gave? It was in probably mid to high 70s is what he thought was the best case scenario, is what his research showed, right?
Yes.
Are they telling you that in their ads?
No.
Are they telling you that in their tweets? Are you seeing those numbers?
No.
No. Are those still pretty good numbers, by the way?
For the elderly,
yeah. But 100%. 100% effectiveness. 100%. And now all of a sudden we're going to have an emergency meeting about myocarditis with the mRNA vaccines. And it's such an emergency, by the way, they'll get to it next week, okay? So hopefully your kid doesn't have a heart attack. Your son, we're getting into summer workouts for football season now, right? So hopefully when your kid's out there, with doing summer workouts for his high school football season, pushing tires in the school football field in 97-degree heat, and you got him vaccinated. Hopefully that's not your kid who then falls down with a heart attack with myocarditis. So that didn't happen to you. The CDC will get to it next week, right? I don't know I mean, one of the highest, I won't say the highest because I'm sinful. I'm a human. Aside from my own sinfulness, there is nothing else that has that's higher on my hierarchy of values of the things that motivate me as a human being than the truth. I want the truth in all things. Tell me the truth. Whatever it is, I just need to know what it is. And so, given I was one of the first people with any platform on the right to say, let's put Christine Blasey forward. Let's put her on the air and see what she has to say. Give her a hearing. And you heard what she had to say, and she offered no details and no specifics whatsoever. Couldn't even pinpoint. She knew the guy. And then we had Julie Swetnick. He's a marauding rapist. Anybody ever call the police? Nope. Call the police, man. And then we had Russian collusion. And I thought, there's just no way with Mueller's. I used to say this on this set, guys. There's just no way with Mueller's resume. I can just see him now at the end of his career. He came out of retirement just to come out here and be a complete F-tard. And he's just going to at the end say, you know what? I got all those Purple Hearts and Bronze Stars and I helped save the country after 9/11. But I'm just going to at the end of my life just reduce myself to complete and total deep state hatchet man. And then he did, right? Then he did.
He did.
And we read the report and we watched his ridiculous testimony, right?
Yes.
And you're thinking to yourself, this is the guy that went to NAM. This guy did. This is the guy that just racked up kills on the Rice Paddy Delta. This guy did. This guy, right?
Yes.
And then you thought, oh, there's no way they're going to take a phone call that there's actually logs and a transcript of. And oh, by the way, and then October hit, and we actually got the very laptop. They're not going to do this, right? And they did. We had a guy under oath testify in the Senate. They confiscated no guns from the insurgency that they keep talking about as an armed insurgency. They're not going to bring Jeffrey Toobin back. I mean, there's 700. Dude, the day after that story came out, they got 700 resumes from better-looking legal analysts, right? They did. You see my point?
I do. Of course.
I don't know where else to go now other than I'm Alex Jones with Bible verses, and I just hope I don't go nuts in the process. Tell me what is the other, because to me, I have to lie to myself. What's the bigger lie I have to tell myself? The lie I have to tell myself to justify giving these people any benefit of the doubt whatsoever, or that I don't? What's the bigger lie I have to convince me? What self-delusion is deeper? That it's not even close to offer them any benefit of the doubt whatsoever. I know what that means, which is why I fought this urge for so long. I knew what road it would put me on, which is why I fought this urge for so long. We all have a tendency, there's somewhere in our lives where we accept the truth on the basis of the consequences for doing so. We all have that shibboleth. This is mine. I knew what it would do to me. I didn't want that to happen to me. And now I'm at a crossroads where either now I have to allow it to happen to some degree, or I have to be an even bigger liar than the ones I expose, right? That's my choice.
Or you become, and anybody else with that choice that goes down that road, become increasingly irrelevant. You have to take the environment as it is.
Yes. And here's what it looks like if I don't allow this to happen to me to some extent. I look like David French. And it's just tweets replete with lies, but just with really highbrow language that make you sound morally superior. But it really, all of you, if you had a bowel movement this morning, you flushed more substance down the toilet than is in any analysis or anything he says.
That's a really important point, because he's just perpetually above the fray, which circles back to this nice person who you talk to, many people. But that's what they want. They see this. It looks ugly. They want to stay above it. Well, don't become it, but you can't stay above it. It is the environment.
And I'll tell you flat out, in the interest of transparency, that is my fear. It's one of the reasons I have resisted this. I'm not sure I can resist the urge to not become like it. Because if I grew up often, not always. There were a lot of great memories. But too often, I grew up in a truth-free environment. And it made me angry. Angry. And that anger manifested itself in destructive ways. And I'm afraid of, I'll just be honest with you folks. I am afraid, this is just a guy named Steve now talking into a live mic. I am afraid of acknowledging that this is a truth-free environment because I'm afraid of what my reaction to it will be. Because there's a very thin line between righteous indignation. And there's really not that much of a line between Nehemiah pulling their beards out and beating the men for daring to do this and Metallica's Kill 'Em All. There's a very thin line, folks. John Brown thought that he was on the right side of that line. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I am afraid of this instinct in me. One of the reasons why I sort of adopted this approach of searching for the higher truth in every situation is not only just my own zeal. Let's be this self-aware that we often accuse other people of not being. Fair?
Yes.
It's not just that I zealously pursue the truth. It's also, frankly, it's a deflection against my own weakness as a person. That I can justify a lot of atrocities. If I become convinced that you are a zero truth opponent, I can absolutely justify a lot of vigilante atrocities in opposition to you. And things that, frankly, my faith tells me I'm not supposed to do, even if that is acknowledged. I'm not allowed to lose my virtue at the same time, right?
Right.
I want to lose it bad. Real bad. I'm fighting. I need you to know I'm fighting the urge not to lose it. One of the reasons I spent 3 hours the other night doing a 25-year research for nothing on how college football would have looked different with a 12-team playoff. My wife was hosting a group for as a therapist. She was hosting her group. My son was at Open Gym basketball. My youngest daughter was with her friends. So I was alone. And I thought, even if I fire up a movie or something, I'm going to get on my phone, and the anger after connecting all these dots with hydroxychloroquine and everything else, the anger is palpable. And I thought, I need something that will not just get me out of this arena, but occupy my brain. So I'm actively employing it, thinking, reasoning through something alternative to this. You know what I'm saying? And so that's why I did that. It was really a self-medication technique to try to get me out of my own head. Because I can bully the bullies, and I will want to, and I will justify it, and I'm afraid of that. And that's one of the reasons I've always been hesitant of, are we sure? We sure there's no way to talk to, I mean, it was just a few years ago, I was letting a reporter for the New York Times into my home to profile me. It was just a few years ago that I was letting a reporter from the Washington Post into my home to interview me. And I've since caught this person just making crap up whole cloth since that moment. It was just a couple years ago we put Michelle Goldberg on our show, right? And now wasn't she the one out there writing the other day that atrocities against Jews are great for right-wing talking points?
Yes.
If I am convinced that the truth is gone, I'm afraid of what I will become. I'll just say that out loud. I'm afraid of it. You guys have any thoughts on that? Because I'd love to hear them.
Well, it is gone. I don't know what else. I get that's the bed we need to make peace with, because it is gone. What else would need to happen to convince us that?
I know.
It is gone, and that's what these dear people in Michigan and they're everywhere else. They and that's my point about self-awareness and we the people. We remain the biggest problem in this entire equation. Those are known variables over there. They hate this country. They believe in unreality. They're godless. what are we prepared to do? It's
See,
just that simple.
I'm prepared to do a lot. That's what I am afraid of.
But yes,
okay.
But right now you are continually operating as a guy who's had to do a lot alone to push and prod and move. How might you be thinking if it was a lot easier to mobilize this army who everywhere was just, oh, hell no? That's part of the problem. How are we collectively standing for this after all the gender nonsense? After the last year of COVID, well, do you even know that these are COVID lies? That's part of the problem. Your lack of self-awareness across the board because you just want your normal. Your normal sucked. It led us to this point. You need a new normal and stop waiting for somebody else to gift it to you.
It's a zero-sum game. It's a zero-sum game, but there are too many people who will look or at least see that it's a zero-sum game and wonder if it comes with Tiger King.
Yeah.
That's the problem I think Todd is describing. Because what part of zero-sum game do we not understand here? They have declared war. It is a war to them. We're the insurrectionists. They are the ones who are trying to root out the insurrection. That's their reality.
We'll come back. There's a lot of good feedback notes. I spent way too much time on myself. I'm sorry about that. We'll get to more of your feedback, I promise, as much as I get to when we return. Rough Greens is one of our partners, long-term partners here on the Steve Deace Show. We've been telling you about that clever little powder that you mix in with your pet's food that has probably been stripped of all the vitamins, minerals, and nutrients your puppy needs, but doesn't get from that store-bought food because if they put that stuff in there, it doesn't last as long on the shelf, and they need it to for mass consumption and distribution. The same thing they do with our own people food. All too often. I mean, that's why we have stores like Trader Joe's and Whole Foods and things like that now, because we know we need those things back in. Or you go to the more traditional stores and then just spend a ton of money on the supplement aisle to put back in what they took out. Rough Greens does that for your pet, but you might be wondering, how do I know if I mix this in with the food my puppy loves, they're going to like the taste of it, right? Well, here's one way to find out. Our dog Cap loves it. Maybe to find out, though, if yours does, we just give you the bag for free. How about that? You just pay for the shipping, a couple bucks for the shipping, but that 14-day Jumpstart bag that we have promoted on the show now for well over a year, that will be for free just to find out if your puppy likes it, so you can find out if you don't see a difference in your dog's overall health and demeanor in 2 weeks or less. When you go to roughgreens.com, RUFF, that's how they spell it over there, roughgreens.com, or give them a call at 833-ROUGH-DOG. All right, back to some Feedback Friday. This is from Kyle. I've always been patriotic and married a wife that is even more so. She loves to go all out for the 4th of July. Up until this year, I've supported it. However, I find it harder to celebrate our country this year. We've gone from George Washington, declaring days of fasting and prayer and Thanksgiving to Biden declaring Pride Month. Am I wrong? How do you process this? I think a lot of people are processing this to some degree. And let me say this, I don't necessarily think it's unhealthy. I don't think it's unhealthy for me as a Christian to not have a blind sense of allegiance or loyalty or patriotism for the country in which I live. I don't think that's unhealthy at all, actually. Okay? That you know a tree by its fruit, right? Mm-hmm. And that if there are moments when we all agree, I mean, in God's hierarchy, what is of higher value and authority, the church or the United States?
The church.
The church, right? So none of us would shy away from the fact that there are moments to leave a church, right? Are there moments to leave a church? For even you as a Catholic, is there a moment to go to another parish?
Okay, that's why.
You see what I'm saying?
Thank you for making that.
So I want to quantify
something
that.
I could answer for you. Yes.
But there is a moment when in the course of human events, you know, the whole document begins with the fact that there's a moment, folks, to break the ties. And the Brits weren't declaring Pride Month, okay? They were declaring stamp tax month, right. Okay? Quartering month. But a lot of the moral perspectives were shared at that time. So if we all agree that the church is of a higher value, and it's probably, and I think we would also agree, it's actually not even a contest, that the church is And there's the church, and then space bar, and several more space bars, and we get to the United States probably, right? If at all. Okay. If we all agree, though, that the church is numero uno in terms of institutions and entities that God has the highest concern and regard for, and we yet within that agree that there are moments to break the fellowship and the ties that bind, right?
Yes.
Why wouldn't the same thing apply to the country in which you live? Right?
Right.
To something that's lesser of value in the mind of God. So if within the mind of God, the thing that the institution by which he has the utmost importance, he gives us a conscience that says, all right, well, they just slaughtered a goat, or they're abusing kids, or they just pilfered, some grandmammy, the promise of curing her cancer and with a prayer and getting slain in the spirit and lied. I'm out, right? Mm-hmm. Those are moments when our God-given conscience says, pour one out, tap it out. You're done here. Move somewhere else, right?
Yes.
Why wouldn't the same thing apply to something of far lesser eternal value, like a country, right?
Right.
Now, what does that look like and mean? I think that's a matter of individual conscience. I think some people can be like Russell Crowe's Jor-El in the Man of Steel movie, when him and Zod each share a disdain for what has become of the culture and government of Krypton. But Zod's response is to essentially go Che Guevara and thinks Jor-El will join him. And Jor-El says, I will honor the man you once were by refusing to do this. Maybe that's the way to go. I'll honor the country we once were, that we were intended to be, and can still be again, by not acknowledging what's become of it now and using the platforms I can to criticize them while still honoring its traditions, right? You could do that.
Yes.
You could just completely absolve yourself from it and say, this is so far gone. At this point, I'm kind of a conscientious objector. I don't even root for Team USA in the Olympics unless it's a kid I know or my own kid, right? I don't know that any of those answers are bad. You could also be more patient and see that overall this is a far greater place to live than anywhere else is. And it is right now, folks. As diminished as we are as institution on an institutional level, what the morsels of our institutions that are left have given us an ability to push back against COVID that has existed in no other free nation in the world that has succumbed to it, right?
Right.
So I think all those answers are okay. What the answer I don't think is okay is to watch everything going on and your response is love it or leave it, bro. I don't think is okay. I think that's now where you have succumbed to some form of an idolatry, because there are some fundamental things here that are not okay. We can disagree, I think, within that about where our own conscience should go in recognizing and identifying that. But to not do that, I think, is where we maybe get into some form of idolatry. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think the biggest problem we have is the reason most people assent to what you said about this being the greatest place to live is it's not really a principled answer. It's ultimately because of luxury items. And they're not, wrong about saying, if you have a choice, air conditioning or not, things like that, of course. But if you have no principles ultimately that are added to that, we are firmly then in bread and circus territory. And as an individual and as a collective, that we, the hoi polloi, can and will be manipulated through entertainment, through comfort.
That's what the Chinese do. Yeah.
It's the gated community effect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And quite frankly, it's a more honest grift over in China than it is here. This one's far more. Experts say
the science.
The science.
Yeah.
I mean, this is very debauched. What has happened to us?
Guys, the Chinese have had people at their public parks and beaches and stuff for well over a year. Okay,
and
well over a year.
This is why Steve's not alone in what he said about there's just, and we talked about it on the show. People need to be waking up. So what will that take? What level of public shame needs to be brought to bear to do that? I mean what I say. It's not hyperbolic. Normal sucks. I don't want to go back. I'm not going back. I won't let you go back if I have anything to say about it. Normal got us here. It was godless and decadent and spoiled and weak. I'm ridding myself of it. You
Other
should
than that,
too.
had a wonderful singing voice. Yes. Aaron, you have a quick thought before I move on?
Yeah, I've been saying this since 2016. If you're going to be attached or in love, intellectually with anything, don't let it be the America that is the hunk of land between two oceans. See, that's a type of thinking, the attachment to the accoutrements, the attachments to the physical things, the attachments to what we see and feel and smell and hear of America. That's not necessarily America. It may be an outcropping, but the America that you should love are encoded and codified in the founding documents. That's the thing that you remember. So I would say in your thinking about America, what are you celebrating? Are you celebrating the independence? Are you celebrating the notion all men are created equal? Are you celebrating that, or are you celebrating America, for lack of a better term?
Sure. That's a really good distinction as well. I listened to a recent podcast on a Friday when you guys got a note from a discouraged young woman looking for a husband. And I wanted to reinforce something that Todd said. I married the high school educated tattooed smoker who ticked, frankly, none of my boxes. But he looked at me in a way I didn't know existed. I couldn't turn my back on that. We were engaged after 8 months of dating and married 5 months after that. 2 kids and almost 18 years later, he still looks at me that way. He's also one of the most intelligent people I know, never sacrifices his values. He's convicted, hardworking, never settles for less than. He taught me everything I know about God and faith. I didn't know I was lost until I met him. He is my better half, and I thank God for knowing what I needed far better than, or for him knowing what I needed far better than I did. While waiting feels like torture, especially for a woman who wants to have a family, I probably don't need to tell you to have faith, but take what Todd said to heart and don't discount someone that might not check all of those boxes. And one last thing, thank goodness he quit smoking within the first year that we were married. That is from Marissa in Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, who I think has tacitly confirmed something I've said to my own daughters. You cannot change a man, but you can inspire him to be the best version of himself. That's different. Doesn't matter what you can do for him. I've said this to my daughters, what you can do for him in the bedroom, in the kitchen, anywhere else. You are not going to change a man, period. You're not. You're not the Holy Spirit. You're not changing a man. Don't believe that lie. But you can inspire him to be the best version of himself.
You can't change him in the way you think you can.
Yes.
But you know, all of that edge, if I did not have my wife to help get rid of my edges, I'd be smoking too, but I've got obviously he did not need the smoking anymore. He had you to pour all of that in the positive energy too, instead of just needing, one way or the other. I got to have, Steve's talked about this 100 times. I got to have a vice, and let me put a Catholic shite on it. We have mortal vices and we have venial vices. I just need the thing. Yes, smoking, I get it. It's not good for, I don't do it. But that was this guy's thing. He didn't need it anymore when you took care of him. When you looked at him that way, flip it around. That's what we're talking about. But man, if you keep thinking it has to come, yes, close hand, open hand, all that. But everybody, your normal sucked a lot of times, you people in this dating universe. You think you know what you need, you have no clue.
We've got all these hookup websites and everything else, and still more studies show married people are having more sex than unmarried people are. All right? And we are the most sexualized as a culture that we have ever been. Then there's the other side. This is from Faith, who says, I'm a 36-year-old female. I've been going to church my whole life, been working for as long as I can remember, bought my first house at 23. I'm capable, independent, God-fearing, and yet I've still been single. This past year has been the hardest year ever I can recall. I've even fallen away from the church. With COVID lockdowns in Illinois, the church has been closed. I felt increasingly lonely. Online church doesn't do it. I feel invisible and rejected. My church tried to open their doors last summer, but then closed them again. They were off and on the whole year, including off during Christmas time. I tried to attend other churches, but nothing really stuck with me. We're running short on time, but she goes on to say, I'm really questioning the Christian life. the church, everything. I've been more inspired by non-Christians' acts of Christian duty and utter humanity than anything else. I know this past year has been a year of reflection for a lot of people, a time of good things, bonding, strengthening a family, getting a chance to work from home in a less stressful environment. I've seen my siblings and their families experience this cool, but for people like me who have had to work on site every day, be forced by their employer to still wear a mask for a year, watch half of our work group get gutted due to COVID austerity, grin and bear it, and then go home every night after all of that to an empty house is painful. It's painful living in a 36-year-old human body completely alone, perpetually alone. I'm handling less and less in life with any amount of grace, wrestling with the definition of joy on a daily basis, as one can plainly see. Other than that, though, I'm great. Thanks. But strangely, at the same time, I'm grateful maybe that I'm not tethered to anyone for this generation of men. I walk into a grocery store, restaurant, or home improvement store, being the only person without a mask tells me this. Listening to their war stories at work about vaccine side effects tells me this. Managing alongside them and witnessing their inability to make basic consequential decisions tells me this. Yes, I judge them. Maybe I shouldn't, but I do because I have a dad, grandfathers, and brothers who are and were real men. Every time you guys talk about your anger and your struggles overtaking you, that's where I'm at. Not all the same reasons, and mine maybe are more petty. They're not, by the way, but they're the same, man, the same. When asked why I was still single, I used to mockingly respond with, well, where are all the men? Show me. Now I seriously ask myself the same thing, but for different reasons. Again, that is from Faith. And I don't know what else to say other than, we feel you.
You're an incredibly healthy, and we're talking about self-awareness of we the people, that's not your problem. And since it's not your problem, there's no way to avoid the feelings that you have. Because that lack of grace everywhere is poison. It's poison.
Inflammation in your body is also poison. You want to make sure you do something about it. Our friends at Omega XL can help. Chances are that that pesky pain, stiffness, achiness in your back, your knees, your neck, your shoulders, that you just can't get rid of, chances are that is inflammation, and it can cause permanent damage if you don't confront it. And I've got just the all-natural anti-inflammatory for you to do just that. It's our friends over at Omega XL, backed by 35 years of clinical research. This is the product that I use, which is why I would personally recommend it to you. And they are giving you a discount if you take me up on that recommendation. Right now, you get buy one bottle and get the second one for free. Buy one, get one free when you go to omegaxl.com/Steve. That's omegaxl.com/Steve, or give them a call at 800-844-4888. Again, that's 800-844-4888. Hey, back to Faith's note. I will tell you this. A friend of mine who's a few years older than you, her and I had a couple of conversations a few years ago where she was saying a lot of the same things you're saying. And was even like writing personal blogs and essays about it. I mean, she just came back to work after, her wedding and honeymoon. So I wouldn't give up yet, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I wouldn't give up yet, but I completely understand your feelings of frustration. This is what you were alluding to a minute ago when I brought up the point, though. You can't change a man, but you can inspire him to be a better vision of himself. Ladies, the number one thing that is crushing the men around you is they have not been taught that they can be more than they think they are. They've not been challenged with that. They've either been condemned for not being enough, so it stifles them taking a chance, but they've not been challenged and inspired to be more than they think they can be. That's the number one threat we have against the men in our culture. Have a great weekend. John 3:17.